Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome to your weekly dose of newsy infotainment. It's Let's Be Treasonable, coming to you from the luxurious studios of Radio Titans in Los Angeles, with your cognitive dissidents on the panel this week from the web series Knocking on Doors. Very happy to have her back on the show, comedian Jessica Abrams. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Right on. Good to have you. And as always, the black voice of reason with us, comedian Tymon Shipp.
Power to the people. It's great to have Jessica with her beautiful smile here. Great. You guys can't see her, but hey, she's having fun. We're glad she's here. Thank you.
I'm glad to be here.
Starting to feel like Chuck Woolery.
I know.
But I'm not Chuck Woolery. I am Dr. David Robinson, your Vin Scully for the impending apocalypse. Normally, this is the point where we would introduce our invisible panelist, Mr. Will Durst, but Will is on the road. He's back in Milwaukee doing other things. So we will not have a burst of Durst this week, but I would like to start because I guess it's really only once, maybe twice a month that I'm not the only Jew in the room. So to Jessica and anyone else who's listening that may be concerned with this sort of thing.
Jessica, are you Jewish?
Oh, yeah, I am. You know what? I'm half Jewish, but as my dad used to say, if the Nazis came back, they would come for you too. And at the time, I would say, Dad, that's crazy. There are no Nazis. And now I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm Jewish. I have to own it, right?
Dad, what was that bit? When are they coming? How will I know who they are? How much of the attic should I clean out? But I want to wish you and anyone else who celebrates a Happy New Year. We had Rosh Hashanah this past week, celebrating the beginning of the year 5778, and that does mean that we are in the Days of Atonement leading up to Yom Kippur. So traditionally, Jews are supposed to ask for forgiveness from anyone who they have offended over the past year. And I mean, I've been doing this show since January, and we were doing the cause effect before the election. So I'm sure I have offended plenty of people. So I sincerely do ask for your forgiveness as we get into the next hour, where I will probably be offending again many times over.
Can I just speak to that, though?
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with offending people, personally. I think there might be something wrong with really hurting people's feelings, but I can't atone for offending. I really can't.
Well, I think there's you get into the difference between someone taking offense at something you said and then intentionally offending people.
Good point.
And with the exception of conservatives who may tune in, I don't think I generally, at least in this show, in my day-to-day life, it's another thing, but I don't think I usually set out to offend people.
No, I don't.
People take offense to what I have to say a lot of times.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things where, you do that half-assed apology, well, I'm sorry if anyone was offended by what I said.
Right.
Which, when you say that, it means you're not sorry. You're just trying to pick a bone with the people who think differently than you. In general, I am very sincere in apologizing for offending people, but at the same time, if you don't like what I'm saying, maybe you need to take a closer look at yourself.
How about annoyance? Can we get people apologizing for annoyance? I get annoyed.
I mean, we're all comedians.
I get annoyed.
Really apologize. I mean, then we're going to spend more time apologizing.
Well, I'm not apologizing.
That's right.
I think they should apologize to me because I just get annoyed by people and their habits and the things that they do, and just not looking at life logically. Because we deal with so many illogical people. That's why we're in comedy. That's why we can laugh at tragedy. Tragedy has more comedy into it than, Well, it's, tragedy plus timing. But as we've seen with the current administration, there's really not enough time in between, like, the egregious offensive things that they do
So
Speaking of Jimmy Kimmel,
well, we're going to get to that in a minute. But yeah, it's the tragedy plus time equals comedy, as they say. We haven't had the luxury of time. It's just reacting to the tragedy.
That's right.
So I was talking. I think I mentioned this on the show last week, but a few weeks ago, was at a birthday party. And wound up talking to a buddy of mine from college. When I was in school, I worked at a music venue. And we were talking about shows that were, like 30 years ago, if I can age myself here. And he remarked, he's like, dude, you realize that was 30 years ago. And I said, yeah, but doesn't it seem like, that seems like as fresh as it happened, as if it happened yesterday. But it really seems like most of the last 30 years have transpired in the last 8 months. It just I feel so much older now in every year on my birthday. I always do the joke, well, I've never been this old before. But I don't remember getting old as fast as I have in the last 8 months,
Well, the ignorance, just continues to transpire over the years. The ignorance just continues to go. People. Well,
it's gone into hyperdrive.
Right. People do not. You got guys that believe that that Obama was trying to do something. They'll still think he's a birth. The fact that you could even still sell that today. As I said to you about the Emmys, that we're still saying, the first black this and the first black that. And people, and Shonda Rhimes was like, this is an embarrassment. We should not be continuously saying this but guess what? You have to, because you didn't do, the wound is still there. They're not going to let the wound heal because no one wants to discuss, no one wants to talk about what's going on and how you just get to rehash what our parents already went through. The fact that we're still having these battles and
well, and I think this is going to take us into our first issue, but one of the biggest problems is that people may not see it as racist or sexist, but they want things to function, quote unquote, the way they always have.
Right.
And it just so happens that, the way it's always been done is that traditionally old white men have been running the show, be it an actual show or, the metaphorical big show that we're all, all the world's a stage and we're merely players, as some older white guy said. But when you're trying to preserve that status quo, you are in effect saying, it's cool that women and people of color are secondary citizens. That we got this, the old white guys. We're good. We know how to do this. Right. We got it. And unfortunately, that's not the way it works. And I say unfortunate not because I think we should be preserving that system, but because there are so many people that have a vested interest in keeping things the way they were. But even the ones who are hurt by the system, but they're used to the way it functions.
But the only way that word gets out for you, a white guy has to say it. When a white guy states that the old white man wants to keep it a certain way, that means that he's the one that is exposing it. Brothers can say it because we feel it. But when a white guy says it and says, you know what, man, you guys are giving these people a raw deal. And then it's got, I'm sorry, then it's got leverage. It does. When you have white people coming out for offenses that have happened to blacks or to Hispanics or things that, it has more validity. I
agree.
Because they eventually say, wait a minute, you know what? You can't do this anymore. Okay? The writing's on the wall. You guys are getting scared. It is what it is. Sorry. Just like, it's like interracial marriage. You said you put laws out. Jim Crow, and then, Dave, to your point, that is the reason why I was talking to my sister about Jim Crow. And Jim Crow had lasted for how long? Well over what? 200? Well over 100 years? Before it was fixed, before you fixed it,
finger quotes fixed.
Finger quote fixed. Yeah. But you put laws in. You said you wanted things segregated, and then when I did do things that you wanted me to do and live the life that you wanted, then you burned down what I had. Mm-hmm. Now, once white folks get that and say, well, you know what, man, we did some pretty, and it's not about guilt. We just want you to acknowledge
atonement. Coming back to atonement.
Yeah. Well, and it's that thing that people need to be empathetic. You need to understand, when you got, people, white folks saying, well, I don't have a problem with the Klan. They've never done anything to me. Well, of course they haven't, because you're white.
Right.
But do you support what they're doing to blacks? Do you support what they're saying about Catholics? And there's the old, poem from, was it the Lutheran minister? First they came for the trade unionists, but I wasn't, so I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Right. And eventually when they came for me, there was no one left to speak up.
Yeah.
Right.
And that, I think is the biggest part of it is, yeah, sure, it doesn't affect me, but I can see, all right, take for example, in the first issue I want to discuss for this week, and I say, this only because it's her title, but our Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, this week announced that we are going to go back to pre-Obama standards on judging rape on campus. And I'm not a rapist. I'm not in school anymore, but I don't have to be to recognize that there is a problem, and that over so many years, sexual assaults on campus have gotten brushed under the carpet because, well, he's an athlete and, team's doing really well this year, or you really want to shake up, and you look at the statistics of how many sexual assaults go unreported.
Right.
Because the victims know that the system is geared against them. So,
but the white boy,
in his wisdom, President Obama tried to change that, and yeah, that's not really working for the rapists.
Right,
so we're going to have to, it's the same argument that Trump was making about, the white supremacist in Charlottesville. Well, there's good people on both sides. It's, what? No, the rapists should not get a fair shake.
Right.
Justice? Right. Sure, because that is what we are all guaranteed under the Constitution. But to try and level the playing field, it's there are people who speak out against affirmative action.
Right.
And like we were talking about before the show, about fathers having the conversation with their daughters about dressing modestly, black parents having the conversation with their children about what to do when you get pulled over. These conversations shouldn't have to happen. But because of the world we live in, they do have to happen.
But we're talking about the land of liberty, the land of the free. We're talking about, people keep talking about freedom. You put those words out there. You said, the American dream and all these different things. But yet, we keep having that as we have allowed, freedom is, most people are not free because they live in bondage in their mind. By the way they think.
But also,
my fantasies are my fantasies, okay?
Yeah. But also, I think, there in this country and in everywhere, there's always, I think for the longest time, certain people felt free or were empowered based on the enslavement and the disempowerment of others. Right? Mm-hmm. And those people, I don't think you can really change their mind. I think what the other people have to do is speak out, rise up, and I do think it falls on white people, but I think those old white men you're talking about, that's never going to change. Those people are just going to die.
Right. Well, I always say to people about the conversation that when Ari was on the show, and I said the conversation that my father had with me was not the same conversation your father had with you.
That's right.
I said, because the white man was part of our daily dinner. Mm-hmm. And I had to tell my mother as I got older one day, I said, can we not eat with him today?
Wow.
I don't want to eat him.
That is fucking intense.
I said, I don't want to eat with him today because, you talk about him. He's the boogeyman. And I haven't even went out there and seen him. Hell, I got to get through the hood first. You got to get through all these black folks who are trying to take my ass out. And now, once I get past them,